Hey y'all, and for my regular viewers, let me pull my wheelbarrow closer so I can recline in comfort. There we go. Let it support me for a while. It's odd. It is so odd. Oh, yeah. Stay straight down the road, John. Don't make any turnoffs. I was saying it's an interesting feeling, an odd feeling, kind of a sad feeling, knowing that Mother's Day is coming up here. And I still had this impulse, well, I better call Mom, but she's not with us anymore, even though I'm sure she's still with me. Because I'm here basically because of her. It's funny. I'm thinking of my mom and dad. Never heard them argue once. My entire life, they never argued, which is, that is a feat. And it wasn't that they kept it to themselves. They just didn't argue because they weren't clashing with each other. We should all be that lucky. But I definitely am here because of my mom. As a byproduct, going back in the ages because of her mom and her dad, Ferry and Eladio Valavinas. Good people, good solid people, good work ethic. So I'm sure that if my grandpa was here, Eladio, who pounded spikes on railroads and then was promoted because he was industrious to riveting trestles, he was a railroad guy. I'm going to take a detour here and say that I always saw him wearing, say, an engineer's cap, an old classic Levi's or Lee jeans engineer's cap. So I'm going to get one. Never wore anything but overalls until he was in his 90s. But yeah, that's where I come from on that side. On the other side, probably why I like to tug the tails of the flurfs out there, is my dad was a mathematician and a a physics guru and an engineering guru, not a girl. Had multiple advanced degrees in engineering, math, and physics. And so, if I was to have to calculate something, just an example, a good example of that. Let me get it. I got it. Hopefully, you can see this. That is the interior of a little building that I built a while ago. And there were lots of angles to calculate, 9 beams coming up from a 7-sided structure, plugging with mortise and tenons into this drop. It's just, a big section of log that I made from a red oak tree, or red pine tree. And then it was beveled with those 7 sides. It looked like a quartz crystal, and then, a chandelier hung from it. But I did all my calculations and wound up going over it with my dad, and he's like, yep, everything is right. And when I fit those 9 beams into that drop and then the fish mouth joint on the sills, I only had to shim 2 sills about 1/4 of an inch. Math is good. That is a real application for math. I was sitting on this bench, this exact bench with him, because he used to enjoy to come, they would come up here and he would sit on the bench and just talk to the visitors. He was a math professor, and so he turned down all these offers, He could have been a millionaire with his engineering degrees, but he wanted to teach. That's what he did. I can totally understand that. Forget the money. I want to do what makes me happy. Life's too short kind of a guy. And he would sit here and talk, and, sometimes I'd have to, cut him off because the wife was upset because she wanted to leave, and the husband and my dad were talking about antique farm tractors. But I asked him one time, because he was my math professor for 2 years of calculus, differential equations, and then it gets into Laplace transforms kind of a thing. But prior to me taking number theory, logic, and all these other 300-400 level courses. Now it's like, I'm able to do calculus. I can work my way around an integral or differentiate something. I definitely understood Laplace transforms a little bit more. An inside joke. Because of algebra. It's like you're doing the same thing with algebra as you are with calculus. But I never really totally grasped it. I wasn't able to look at calculus, integrals, and differentials, from 360 degrees and actually comprehend what I was able to do with it. I mean, I know how to do it, but I don't understand why. Why? I'm like that little boy. Why is the sky blue? Why is the Earth a spheroid? an oblate spheroid. Need to know why. And so I was talking to him about calculus. He was explaining, because he knew how it worked. You know, Sir Isaac Newton and a German fellow co-invented calculus. I'm not sure if they communicated with each other, but they brought calculus into the world at the same time. And calculus does a lot of things, but one thing it does, it explains and helps us, calculate changes in motion. That is, calculus, probably its greatest feat. Changes in motion. Although everything beyond, like spreading shredded bark, uses calculus, can use applied calculus, that's its greatest feat, I would have to say. You may say I'm wrong, you may say, John, you're a fool, because calculus does something even greater than that, but changes in motion. And then he started talking, and really it was the only time that he ever talked to me about spirituality of stuff. He just wasn't that kind of person, He was a very good guy, very nice guy, very generous guy, but we didn't have deep conversations. It just wasn't, it didn't go beyond music or math and stuff like that. But he started talking about, he knows that there is a greater power because of calculus. He said, how could it be that the movements of everything can be described by these formulas that are so precise? And if you study like acceleration, the velocity and stuff like that, the formulas, it's all very well, related to integrals and differentials, depending on which way you want to go with it. And so that is that. I'll throw that out there for, those of you who think math is witchcraft, and it's just like this deceptive tool and stuff. If you look at it from the other side of the glass, you can definitely see that there is a definite order to the universe. And you can say it's accidental, it's random, it's by a higher power, but I don't see the sense of removing, say, Newton's laws of motion or Kepler's laws of orbits, or Bode's law, Bode-Titus, I think it is, that explains the order of planets around, a sun and stuff like that. Those aren't there to deceive us. Those are there to show us the wonderful order of the universe. Physics equations, which can be backed up by experiments, and a lot of them we can do. Now, there's some that, take specialized equipment, but that's what they're doing in the university that have access to that. Thinking, experimenting, trying to pull apart information that's not flawed. And I have to say, because you asked about the logic and proofs and if-then statements, everything boils down to that. Even though I didn't appreciate logic and number theory when I was in it, I can look back and say that although Cartesian geometry or pre-calc, basically Rene Descartes was able to bridge the gap between algebra and Euclidean geometry. And that was my favorite class. I loved that. I loved analytic geometry. If I was to be on a desert island with I'm not going to say one woman because I'm married. Well, it would be my wife, by far a choice. Yep, that's documented. One wine, none, because I don't like wine. I'd rather have Guinness Extra Stout, not that Guinness Draft stuff. Guinness, why do you make that stuff? It's like Guinness Extra Stout Light. Ah! And one kind of math, it would have to be Cartesian geometry, or analytic geometry. Cartesian coordinates kind of a thing that puts numbers to, say, geometry. But that would be it. I have to appreciate everything else. In conclusion, yes, I'm rambling. You can say that I go off on these weird tangents somehow. Trigonometry. Trig is cool. Can't say as I enjoy being geometry too much because there's too much memorization. I rather figure stuff out than just memorize stuff. But it was important. But I tell you what, I'm going to be pushing this wheelbarrow full of that first load of shredded bark all day. And so I'd go buggy if I wasn't thinking about other stuff besides shredded bark. So I thought I'd just kind of pass that along. In conclusion, feel free in the comment section to explain, what your favorite math is if you were on a desert island. And be free to say physics. That's okay. That's okay because it bridges the gap. I wish I had the rest of these photographs. This is really washed out, but this is a view of that finished mushroom house. Right there, if you can see it. I had that interior ceiling, then I had exterior, what'd you call them, kind of rafters or something like that, that I laminated so they'd be curved, and then using cedar sticks to attach the shakes, or the shingles, I forget if they're shakes or shingles, created that little mushroom thing. Now this is a secret. The fellow that I built this for held me to my bid. If you were ever in construction, you know that like you might bid something out at $10,000 and and it goes beyond that. Well, he held me to my bid and I calculated it out and I made under $5 per hour on that thing total. And I milled all the wood because it was 7-sided. I had to mill that stuff, calculate the angles and run it through it and mill it. And some of the wood for the deck that went around it, I actually milled the lumber for it with my chainsaw mill. And so it was a highly kind of complicated affair to build that thing. He held me to my bid. And I remember when I was nearing the end of it, he had bought a Ferrari off the internet on a whim. And I'm up there, muttering under my breath because I'm mad that he's not going to give me at least a bonus. Looking down there and he's like, "John, can you help me change my windshield wipers?" And it's like, dude, I'm not going to touch that thing because I don't want you to say I scratched it. And when I finished it, I made this birch bark cone to cap it because at the top there was, rain could go down there. Even though the roof was multi-layered, so if it did, it would just shut off anyway. But the day after that, I think it was, I capped it with a birch bark cone, stitched and everything, just sweetgrass, the whole 9 yards, and in green, so you couldn't really read it unless you knew what you were looking for, was in these big green letters, "Bite me." So that is the non-family friendly portion of this video, but it felt good to do it. It felt good to do it. And I suppose, like a lot of construction people, if you're angry at the homeowner, which happens, behind the walls you might have taken your Sharpie and written stuff. So unfortunately, a tree fell on this thing and damaged it, so they tore it down. I can imagine what the people thought when they read the wood underneath the hidden spots. But that is that. I guess I've stalled long enough. I need to go into my shredded bark pile and get my wheels going here. Maybe I'll have a cup of coffee first. Thank you for listening. If you don't like this video, send me a self-addressed stamped envelope and I shall give you your money back. You can get a refund. 100% of what you paid to watch this. Ugh.